Hello and welcome to Sami Parvez Show. Today I am joined by Harrison Faulkner, True North journalist and producer. Thank you so much, Harrison, for joining me today, and it's a pleasure to have you here.
Pleasure to be here, Sammy. Thanks for having me on.
My pleasure. Thank you. And as you have been covering the international student protest in Prince Edward Island and Brampton and other places of this country, what do you see? So they are asking for permanent residency. So as you have been reporting, and so other media too. So mostly from India, are they specific from one a particular community, or they all are Indians, or you can see other people are joining them?
It's tough for me to know exactly where they all come from, but my understanding is that the majority of them come from the Punjab area of India. That's where the bulk of as far as I can tell, that's where the bulk of the Indian migration to Canada is actually coming from, particularly with the student system that we have. So you're looking at, a lot of Sikhs, a lot of their foreign language coverage. What I mean by that is, the content that they put out themselves on social media, that is in Punjabi. Now it's funny, I wouldn't know this had this not become a major issue in Canada. I wouldn't have been able to tell you the difference of Punjabi or Hindi and Gujarati. I wouldn't know the difference because it's not something that, would really cross my radar. But this has become the biggest story in Canada right now. Mass immigration. And if you want to take a deeper look into it, it's the international student system that has really become this major issue. And the bulk of the overwhelming majority of these students are coming from India, and the overwhelming majority of the protesters that I can see are coming from Punjab in India. So it's kind of got this regional aspect to it. It's not just an Indian issue. It's got a regional aspect to it as well, which I find to be very interesting.
So do you think they are legitimate students?
Well, they seem to be awfully old for students. I'll just put it that way. I think that, to say that they're not all legitimate students would be kind of pushing it too far. I think that they actually have student visas. What kind of schools they go to, we don't know what these schools are. My feeling is that a lot of these schools are these diploma mill colleges in strip malls, and they're not really colleges at all. You would look at it and you would sooner think that it's a supermarket than you would a college, with a lot of these strip mall colleges, these diploma mill colleges. That being said, there are quite a lot of these large public colleges in Ontario that have opened up Brampton campuses, that have opened up Toronto campuses. I'm thinking about Algoma, Seneca, Georgian. These are well-known colleges that have good reputations amongst local Canadians who go there for trades, who go there for specialty programs. And if you look at their Toronto locations, well, they're 90% internet. Well, they're all international students. It's 90% Indian. And the kind of education these students are getting, we don't really know what that looks like. All that to be said, Sammy, this is all really just a way to get PR. So to answer your question, are they legitimate students? Well, they might have student visas, but I don't think they came here to study.
So you think this was just a backdoor, or just a reason to get in?
Most certainly. Most certainly. I think that that was the intention before they came to Canada. I think they knew exactly what the plan was. I think that the government opened up the system to allow these young Indian people to qualify for student visas to get their PR. We've seen footage out of India, out of these agents who are hired by these colleges, and they just openly say this is your way to get PR into Canada. And I'm of the belief, I haven't seen this yet, but I'm of the belief that these colleges are totally in on the system. They know exactly what they're doing. They're facilitating this pathway to permanent residency. Once you get your permanent residency and you have a PR and you've been in this country for, 3, 4, maybe 5 years, well, you're basically qualified to get your citizenship. And that seems to be what it is, right? It is a path to PR, but it's also a path to citizenship. And it's had drastic impact on our country, and it's having a major impact on the economy, the workforce in our country.
Yeah. So do you think, I think Canada did not see something like this before 2015 when Trudeau took office. So do you think a liberal government is playing a vital role for making this happen? Or
Of course, this liberal government has decided that mass immigration is going to be their credo. It's going to be their defining policy in this country, whether it be through the international student system, whether it be through, the temporary foreign worker program, the permanent residency numbers that they have put into place. Just think about this. Before Trudeau came to office, under Harper, the government was taking in around 200,000 permanent residents a year. And the coverage at the time was that 200,000 was way too much and it was way too fast. But no one really made a big deal about it because 200,000 a year compared to now, that sounds like nothing. That's easily absorbable. We're now dealing with over 500,000 permanent residents, over 1 million student visas. 4% of the entire Canadian population are non-permanent residents. So when you think about it that way, this is a government policy. If the government wanted to stop this, they could. And I think it's important to highlight this. The news around the international student system really blew up this year. It was starting to trickle out last year, but at the beginning of this year, it really became an untenable situation for the federal government. That's why we saw them put in the caps on the student visas. That's why we've seen the immigration minister go out and say that international students and temporary foreign workers are facilitating the suppression of wages in Canada, and that employers are benefiting off these workers and not having to raise wages. Trudeau himself said that the number of non-permanent residents in Canada was larger than the country could absorb. What happened immediately after they said those things, though? We've now seen new pieces of legislation, such as the birthright citizenship law that's come into place. We've seen a new effort by the immigration minister to grant permanent residency on arrival for registered caregivers, to drop the language requirements that he describes as onerous. So every time the government does something, well, it almost always ends up leading back to the fact that it facilitates their mass immigration agenda. And every time they say they want to stop the system or control the system, now they speak outside of one side of their mouth, and then on the other side of the mouth, the next day, they come out with outrageous pieces of legislation, which only continue to make the problem worse. So it has to be a liberal policy. It has to be part of their system. It's what they believe in. This is all coming from the Prime Minister, who said that Canada has no core identity and that Canada would be a post-national state. It seems to me that they work every day to achieve that ambition.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So let's get back to the protest. So Prince Edward Island, you were there and you have been covering in Brampton. So I think a Liberal MP also wrote to PI Premier to grant them permanent residency. So what happened then? Like, what they were given a green light, or they are still pending? And there was another like post you put on, like the people just lined up for a PR interview.
Yes. So after Charlottetown, Prince Edward Island Liberal MP Sean Casey voiced his support for the protesters in Charlottetown, really turning his back on his own people, it looked as though up until that point, the government at a provincial level and the federal level, they were kind of giving these guys the cold shoulder. They were not really showing them support. They weren't kind of leaning into this protest the same way as to what happened in Manitoba. And it's important to highlight what happened in Manitoba because that was the first protest of these international students demanding permanent residency and work permit extensions. The work permit extension is just to get their PR, right? So it's a bit complicated, and I'm not an immigration expert, but there are these weird acronyms for all these larger immigration-based systems. You got your PGWPs, your postgraduate work permits, your provincial nominee program system, and of course, you've got PR. So basically, um, the opposition parties in Charlottetown, in Prince Edward Island, they are supporting these protesters.
Mhm.
That would be the Liberals, the Greens, the NDP. Prince Edward Island is run by a conservative government
Yeah.
led by Dennis King.
Mhm.
Dennis King has so far refused to, concede to the demands of the protesters, but they keep getting a chance to speak inside of the Prince Edward Island legislature. They keep getting the opportunity to speak to MPPs and voice their concerns.
Mhm.
I would argue, Sammy, that if you or I were protesting something that had to do directly with, domestic legislation, let's just go back. Let's say we were protesting the vaccine mandates.
Mandates. Mhm.
Do you think that any of us would be invited into the Ontario legislature or the Prince Edward Island legislature and get a chance to speak to MPPs directly?
No.
Of course we wouldn't, right?
Yeah.
It's absurd. However, it's becoming a political issue. I have two more things to say on this. One more thing before I get to the clip that I posted yesterday. That is that when I was in Prince Edward Island, the people that I spoke to who were not in support of the protest, and that would be basically, as I've been told, anyone who lives outside of the major city, Charlottetown, just like it is in every other province in our country, people who live in the major cities are quite liberal. They're quite far removed, I would say, from the needs and everyday concerns that are facing the majority of Canadians. Now, I was told by the people who live in Prince Edward Island that the overwhelming majority of Prince Edward Islanders do not support this protest. And that is why Dennis King has not caved to their demands. It is not politically tenable for him to say, yeah, you know what, we're going to give you all extensions. We're going to let you all become permanent residents. Because, in what instance in this country would a professed conservative politician not cave to the demands of immigrants demanding rights in our country? It always happens in Canada. But for Dennis King to not do that shows you that there really is no political appetite in Prince Edward Island to grant these protesters permanent residency. The clip that we saw, that I saw yesterday and I posted, was basically, it was a group called Innovation PEI. I don't know the details of Innovation PEI. It sounds like a crown corporation. It sounds like a government-based, kind of half and half public-private sector company. And they were conducting provincial nominee program interviews. I call it PR because basically, if you get a provincial nominee program and you're in an interview, well, that gives you permanent residency. That's your pathway to PR. So
Yeah.
it's sort of the same thing. But
Mhm.
this was a massive group of these protesters, of these Indian international students, not really queuing up. They were just sort of
Yeah.
swarming in office to get interviews for provincial nominee program draws out of Innovation PEI. A completely bizarre thing, but we're seeing it everywhere in our country. We're going to see it in every province because everyone is in on this international student visa game. Colleges are making cash hand over fist.
Mhm.
Immigration consultants are making out like
Yeah.
bandits,
Yes.
right? And so everyone's making money except for us.
Yes.
The Canadians are getting poorer, but
Mhm.
everyone else is in on it. They're getting rich.
Sure. So what are you hearing from insiders, and what are you predicting? What will happen? So will these people be given like PR? And what we have seen, like before, there were like 600 or 700 students who believe they were just like misled or just robbed by agents, so given false information. So they've been given a temporary work permit or something like that to stay in Canada. I don't know what happened then, but so what do you see with respect to the current situation in PEI and Brampton?
Yeah. So it's tough to predict because I think that we're dealing with different political environments. I think the political environment in Prince Edward Island is very different to the one in Ontario, for example. My gut tells me that there's going to be a major change to the international student system, and that is that the original government cuts are going to be strengthened and they're going to limit it even more. and that a lot of these scam colleges are going to be called out and going to be found out and then shut down. But I don't believe that the protesters are all going to be, sorry about that. I don't believe the protesters are all going to be deported if their work permits expire. I think somehow, some way, they will be granted extensions. The Prince Edward Island case is very interesting because there just does not seem to be the political appetite or the will amongst the people to grant them an extension. I think if Dennis King did that, it would be a remarkable failure, and he would probably face the anger of his people quite significantly. Immediately, what I think is going to happen here, Sami, is that, as I predicted, and I think many others have, these protests are all going to start showing up. There's going to be protests, not just in Brampton. There are going to be protests in some of our Northern Ontario cities. It's important to remember these students come to Canada. They pay tens of thousands of dollars to an immigration agent to fill out forms, which they themselves can fill out themselves, so they could save the money. They give this money to immigration agents. Then they go halfway across the world without accommodation plans, without really any plans, and they end up in North Bay, Ontario. They end up in Thunder Bay, of all places. Now, that is a long way away. It's a long way away from Toronto. But so I don't think they're all victims, because I think they know what they're doing. I think they know exactly what they're doing the entire time. What that means is that there are going to be these protests in Thunder Bay, in North Bay, in Barrie, in Toronto. It's going to become a major, major issue. And then what happens there? Well, look, when it comes to Doug Ford's government, I wouldn't hold my breath. If you're expecting them to say, no, we're not going to cave to your demands. Doug Ford is probably willing to treat his own people much worse than he would a group of international students from India claiming to be victims. I wish that weren't the case, but they've already shown us how they treat us. So, they always repeat, the mass immigration slogans. Diversity is our strength. Immigration is what builds our country. They always say this stuff. So I wouldn't hold my breath. I would expect that, there's going to be some sort of amnesty given to them.
Okay, thank you so much. So let's come on like liberal government. So it always says like diversity is the source of strength, and I believe you remember when Trudeau was just running for office, he said that he will bring 25,000 Syrian refugees. So then he brought it up to 50,000, maybe more than that. And then recently he said he's going to bringing up like 1,000 Palestinians. Then he just went up to like 5,000. So as you mentioned, like everyone knows, Trudeau always the most like a good quote, or its famous quote: "Diversity is the source of strength."
Yes.
Okay, so he's keep doing this thing. So do you think conservative government under Pierre Poilievre will be much different?
At this point, not so much, because I can only take Pierre Poilievre at his own words. I can't put words into his mouth. I can't say that he's going to do something which he doesn't say. So it's important to remember what he has said. One of the things he will always say when speaking, and I find this to be a really important point, Poilievre will say this to English-speaking media when they ask, what is your plan with immigration? He will say, we're going to tie immigration to demand in our country. We're going to tie it to available housing supply, available job supply, and that Trudeau has broken the system. Now, you would think that by saying that, right, that means there's going to be a reduction in immigration. That means the numbers are going to slow down, because obviously we do not have the housing supply. We don't have the housing supply for our current population, let alone for the next 500,000 permanent residents we're going to bring in next year, and however many non-permanent residents are going to come in as well. However, Poilievre will say that to English-speaking media when he's asked this question by foreign language media, ethnic media, as they call it in the political circles, that are based in Canada. He will say he is pro-immigration. He will say he wants to make immigration faster. He will say that he wants to be able to unify families faster. And that would just lead me to believe that, well, he's saying kind of two things, right? He's almost basically pandering to ethnic media to say, we're going to keep this system going. We're going to keep bringing in immigrants faster. But then when he speaks to English media, he's going to tie it to demand. Well, Sami, you can basically just make the demand whatever you want to make the demand if you're in government, right? You can say, well, actually, we have a labor shortage. Where have you heard that from, right?
Mhm.
Every single major business lobbying group always says there's a labor shortage. There is not a labor shortage. We know that's nonsense.
Yes.
But they will say there's a labor shortage. And what does that mean? Well, that means there's a demand for more people. And my feeling is, look, I'm not optimistic. I think that Pierre Poilievre is playing it very safe. I think that he doesn't want to come across as anti-immigration, despite the fact that the majority of immigrants in Canada want lower immigration. He's afraid to be called a racist. Let's just call it what it is.
Yep.
And, one more thing on this. Poilievre's immigration shadow minister, Tom Kimmich, to True North, actually, he was asked directly, will you commit to lowering immigration if your demand formula says that the numbers need to be lower? What was his answer? His answer was, I can't predict what the demand will be. If it's lower, it's lower. If it's higher, it's higher. Why even say that if we all know the demand is not there? That, I think, tells you exactly what you need to know about these conservatives, that it seems as though status quo is the way the way they want to go with this.
So the bottom line is there is no difference between liberal government and conservative. They always just put their interest ahead of like Canadians, right?
Pretty much. Pretty much. I mean, what is their ultimate goal? Their ultimate goal is to be elected. They want to get in power.
Mhm.
They want the government to be, they want the front benches of the government to wear blue ties instead of red ties.
Yeah.
Are they ideologically conservative? Do they really protect family values? Do they really believe in conservative principles and values? They've shown us they're not really that conservative at all. So it's all about the color of the jersey, not really about the real meat and potatoes, the actual legislation. They don't really care about that. They just want to get in power. That's politics everywhere.
Yeah, you bet. So do you think I just sat down, like did an interview with Maxime Bernier, People's Party of Canada. So do you think he will make a difference or he will make a difference?
I think a place for the PPC in Canadian democracy is critical. I've always said this. I don't agree with the PPC on every policy. They're the only party that actually speaks about immigration the way the majority of Canadians want to hear.
Mm-hmm.
Right? The majority of Canadians and the majority of immigrants in Canada all agree immigration is too high. It's not racist to say that. It doesn't make you a racist for saying you want to lower immigration.
Mm-hmm.
Maxime Bernier has been the only guy talking about this, and he's been talking about it since 2019. So for me, if Canadian conservatives want to make sure that a conservative government or a conservative opposition party remains conservative, there's a very important place for the PPC to be the anchor. They have to be there. They have to be pulling on the Conservative Party to make sure they don't abandon the base. Because for a long time, right, the Conservative Party could do whatever they wanted because they automatically had half the Canadian population wrapped up.
Mm-hmm.
And they could continue to go along the Overton window. They could continue to move left as the Liberals moved left, and they would still maintain their conservative vote. Now, there's a challenger to that. It's critically important that that party remains in play, that they adopt and adapt to the new system of how politics works. They don't get left behind. But for them to be out of the equation, Sami, think about what would happen. Think about this. If right now, when immigration is the biggest issue in Canada, there was not a single political party talking about immigration, it would be a disaster. So it's critically important that the PPC exists and that they're in play and that they offer Canadians an alternative. I really believe that.
So Harrison, you believe like PPC will play a key role in the next election to take some votes from conservative?
Well, I actually hope they do play a key role. I think it's important for them to play a key role. Look at what they did in 2021. 5% of the popular vote is not nothing. It's not something to laugh at. It's pretty significant. And the PPC have shown an ability to show up at by-elections, secure enough votes to make the margin of difference, and show that conservatives cannot abandon conservative principles. So, you know, I think it'll be tough to say because the polls are so strong in the conservative favor that it looks as though a conservative victory is all but guaranteed. Whether or not the PPC will have a good run this time, I'm not sure. But that doesn't really mean too much in the next election. I want to see a conservative alternative party exist with a conservative government in charge.
Should we jump on Oxford results? Like Oxford last time, do you remember Pierre
Yep.
Pouliot and Andrew Scheer interfered, just endorsing their favorite candidate, and then so that guy Arpan Khan got elected.
Mhm.
Should we jump there or?
Well, I mean, look, this is not the first time that there have been allegations that the Conservative Party has been, um, let's just call it what it is, kind of pulling the strings in nomination races and dictating who is a good enough candidate to represent the party, despite the amount of public support that a candidate has. I remember the Garrett Van Dorland, the candidate that was going to be the nominee in that race, a lot of local support. He grew up in that area. He had the backing of a strong Christian faith backing. He was a good pro-life, real conservative candidate, right? We're talking conservatives here.
Mhm.
We're not talking liberals. We're talking about being conservatives. And the party seems to be doing two things sometimes, right? They've got a little bit of favoring, right? You did something good for me several years ago. You were a good staffer. You're a good candidate. We're gonna give you a favor, and we're going to put you into we're gonna parachute you into a safe conservative riding. That happens sometimes.
Mhm.
Other times, it appears as though the Conservative Party do not want to have certain candidates represent them. And what are usually those lines? Well, too often I find that ends up being about pro-life. Pro-life conservatives are quick to be dismissed by the establishment Conservative Party. Big mistake, in my opinion. That's just the way it operates. Like I said, Sammy, what do these guys want to do? Are they really conservative? Or do they just want to win? Or do they just want to win and be in power? Is power the ultimate ambition? Or is making significant conservative change in Canada the ultimate ambition? If you were, I think we all know what the right answer to that is. And we all know that the right answer is not what's really going on. The truth is that politicians want to win and they don't really care what gets them to victory. They'll do it regardless. If it means axing a perfectly great conservative candidate and parachuting in a friend, well, that's what it appears they've been doing. That's what it appears they've been doing. So it's not something that's a foreign concept of the Conservative Party. This happens quite a lot. I'm sure it happens in the Liberal Party too. Don't get me wrong. I think they're all the same. Let's
Yeah.
just put it that way. I'm not just trying to pick on the conservatives.
Mhm.
But the Oxford by-election was very interesting. Remember, the entire Oxford EDA resigned
Yeah.
after the Conservative Party booted Garrett Van Dorland and they parachuted in Arpan Canada. They cleared the field for Arpan. And the conservative EDA, the actual people on the ground who volunteer, who put their time for free to try to win, the true heart and soul of your party, your volunteers, they resigned. So that tells you something.
Yeah, I remember. And then Dave McKenzie also volunteered for the Liberal candidate. They just came too close, as it did not happen. Like David McKenzie was the MP for Oxford writing almost 20 years, for 2 decades.
Yep. And I don't think Dave McKenzie was certainly an extremely liberal guy, right?
Mhm.
I think that it happened, it was all about protesting what had gone wrong, an undemocratic process, where they just booted a candidate. I don't remember even what the rules were, or what the ruling was as to why they had to boot that candidate. I think it was because he didn't disclose that he was written about in articles, 10 years ago, 12 years ago. Um, or there were social media posts that he didn't disclose. I mean, if you're serious about winning and you're serious about building true conservatives and and actually adopting true conservative principles, you shouldn't be concerned about what legacy media who hate us all. Let's just put it this way. The legacy media are liberals, dyed in the wool leftists, and they hate conservatives. They will attack conservatives, whether they're important or they're just local activists. So why would we take their words 12 years ago? And I don't know if that's the case. I'm just putting out an example here. Why would we take their words 12 years ago as though it's gospel, as though it's like a major warning label? Oh, this guy's a dangerous guy. We can't trust him because the legacy media 12 years ago wrote an article in a local paper saying that he's a dangerous pro-life activist. It's nonsense.
Yeah, so this has been going on. Like the legacy media always used to attack. Like in 2019 election, they took like conservative to court for by CVC just for that
Yep.
kill it. Like it made a like a big impact. And last time you were talking about that PPC, I just shout out, I believe there were 20 seats. If those like PPC voters, if they voted for the conservative could win those seats, like extra 20 seats.
Yes. And that shows you that there's something going on here that's really important.
Mm-hmm.
2021 was a great year for Maxime Bernier because COVID was the biggest thing, right? It was what dominated the election. It was the COVID election. I believe this coming election should be the immigration election. You and I and other people who care about this, we can make it the immigration election. The politicians won't.
Yeah.
But the COVID election was 2021, and Bernier once again found himself standing alone with the majority of Canadians. He was the guy standing up for everyone else when all the politicians were doing their little weird video telling everyone to get vaccinated. If you remember that,
Yeah.
you've seen it. It's
Yeah.
unbelievable. And once again, Maxime Bernier has a chance to be the only guy standing with the majority of Canadians on immigration. So, look, I hope they have a great election. I hope they are organized. I hope they're professional. I hope they're serious, right? Sometimes with these smaller parties, you can run into some of these issues. I want them to be serious. I want them to be a real player. I want them to be a fighter because the Conservative Party needs an anchor and
Mhm.
Canada needs
Yes.
a right-wing opportunity, a solution, and a party to vote for that is not the Conservatives.
You bet. So one more question. This is just not
Yes.
related to this, but with respect to like Australia is a mandatory voting law. Like you have to go show up on polling day. So do you think Canada should do something like that?
Wow, that's a tough question. You know, I don't know. I don't know because I don't know how it would go, right? We've got traditionally low voter turnout,
Mm-hmm.
and that's a problem. I think we got all agree that's a big problem. We need more democratic participation. Um, look at the last federal election. It had
Mm-hmm.
the lowest turnout, and
Yes.
Justin Trudeau does not have a mandate to make the decisions he's making. It is unbelievable, right?
Yeah, I
He
believe
has-
he just received like 30% of the vote, like 33, I remember, and he just leading the entire population, entire
yes,
nation.
yes. And NDP voters didn't vote for Justin Trudeau, but the NDP have decided to become Justin Trudeau's little party, right?
Mhm.
They're operating as a majority government. They're making major changes. So it's tough to say. I think I wish everyone voted. I just wish everyone
Yes.
cared.
Mhm.
Um, whether we want to force people to vote, I don't know. I don't even know how do they, I don't even know how they enforce that. Is there like some tax penalty or something like that if you don't
Yeah.
vote? I don't know how it works, but it's an interesting concept. I think that there are interesting mandatory policies that we can look at, like a military service policy,
Yes.
for young Canadians. That
Mhm.
to me sounds to be a bit more, that's more my speed. But you know what? If it works in Australia, let's remember they voted in an
Right.
Albanese Labor government who's quite leftist.
Hmm.
So you never know how it's going to go, right? You never
Yeah.
know how it's going to go if you force everyone to vote.
Yeah, but as like as you said, like as the poll shows, there were too much like against of liberal government. If the government is going to do the same thing, so the other choice would be PPC. So there are
Yes,
lots of
true.
support, like even though Maxi Bernier got arrested, like during a protest in Manitoba, and also like he was charged in Saskatchewan too, and he paid a price for that one. So I
Yep.
believe that there could be something different if a mandatory vote should be implemented.
Yeah, you're probably right. You're probably right because I think a lot of people, if they were forced to vote, right, are they really going to vote for Justin Trudeau? Are they really going to put a dot beside his name or Jagmeet Singh?
Mhm.
I think the people who vote for Jagmeet Singh vote all the time, right? Leftists are quite politically active. The majority, I think, who don't vote are, they're apathetic. They're not really that engaged, and they're probably leaning conservative. They all know who Trudeau is. They all know what's going on in the country. They feel it in their wallets. So you're probably right in that sense. If there was mandatory voting, I think the majority count for the conservatives would go up. I think the PPC would do pretty well. And I think that nothing would really change with the NDP or the Liberals. The NDP guys, they always show up to the ballot box because they're very politically active. That's just the nature of leftists. But so maybe you're onto something there, Sammy. Maybe you are.
Okay, Risham, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Just like I'm sorry, like I'm taking your time. How much time you left?
No problem, man. I've got I'm not I got nothing going on.
Okay. If you don't mind, we can go on. Like if you have something, so I will just leave it here. But I have a few more things if you are interested.
Hey, sure, man. If you want to keep going, let's do it.
Yeah, please. So just right now, Toronto, a by-election is coming up in sorry,
St. Paul's.
excuse me. Okay, so Toronto St. Paul's
Yes.
by-election. There are, if I'm not wrong, 84 candidates are running, including 73 independent candidate, two who are non-affiliated,
It
yes,
makes me laugh. It makes me laugh.
and nine are from different political parties, like including Liberal, Conservative, NDP, PPC, Green, and there are some other political parties like Marxist or something else. I don't know,
Yes, the
but
Marxists, the
yeah,
communists.
yeah, and there is a marijuana party.
Of course. It's Toronto after all, Sammy. Don't forget.
You bet, Harrison. So right now the polling shows, like history shows, it has been a safe riding for liberals for 30
Mhm.
years, for 3 decades. Uh, so how do you see, will it be turned to conservatives?
Well, what's funny? I grew up in that riding.
Mm,
And so I always, it was always liberal. It was liberal provincially, and has been liberal federally for a long time. Carolyn Bennett, who was just a disgraceful
mhm.
minister of mental health and addictions during her time. As we're talking about it, I want to pull up the polls and just see myself what they're saying about St. Paul's, because I was driving through that riding and I had never seen I had never seen that many conservative lawn signs for a candidate in a by-election for the St. Paul's area. So it's remarkable. Will it go to the conservatives? I'm not sure. If it does, it would be an absolutely crushing defeat for Justin Trudeau. It may be the nail in the coffin because of just how just how embarrassing it would be. It is the reddest of red seats. So I'm not sure how it's going to go. These ridings almost always go liberal, right? Even when faced with these bad situations like the liberals are in, um, it usually will go liberal. I think it's probably going to go liberal, but I think the conservatives are going to be very close. And even if it's very close, like let's put it within a low voter turnout, that's bad for the liberals, right? A low voter turnout, they want change. The people who are really, really, up for it are going to show up for the conservative candidate. I'll put it this way. I think it's going to stay liberal. I think it's going to be very close. Either way, if it's really tight, it's bad for Justin Trudeau. If it goes conservative, that's the election right there, right? We already know how the election's going to go, but if it goes conservative, it's over for Justin Trudeau. There's simply no way to come back from that. The St. Paul's conservative St. Paul's seat would be beyond remarkable, beyond remarkable. It would be like a Manhattan. It would be like Trump winning a downtown like New York, Manhattan district, Chicago, Illinois district.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen. Doesn't happen.
Thank you, Harrison. So there are one another thing I need to ask, then I will jump on something else. So 73 independent candidates. So do you think it is okay for independent candidate? I believe there is a group which is called large ballots. So they are just educating for more people get their names in the ballot. So don't you think it should be better, like, so you need to elect like nominate one person independent candidate, then encourage people to vote for this independent candidate rather going to other political parties, and rather than you are going to nominate 73 independent candidates. I don't know, you went through this one, that there are 73 independent candidates being nominated by just one person who is there, who referred them, like.
Right. Well, I kind of like it because it's just because there's a level of trolling involved, right? Okay, so there's only two people that could win. Let's just be honest, right?
Yes.
There's two people that have a chance to win, and only really two people have lawn signs, in the area. In the UK, for every election, right? Whether it's an MP election, whether it's a regional council seat, the UK has a tradition where every candidate who is listed for that area gets on a stage together. They get on a stage together, and then someone who's working that area, they read out the ballot count to everyone at the same time. And almost every major seat in the UK where the prime minister, the leader of the opposition, is running, they have candidates who, I'm not joking here, they dress up in garbage bin outfits, like they like Halloween costumes. They are joke candidates. They have fake names. They kind of just take the piss out of these guys. It's kind of like it's a joke, right?
Yeah.
But it's funny. It's
Yeah.
funny. It's like, let's not take these guys too seriously. And so of course they can't win. So what's really the problem, right? They're only going to get one vote, sometimes maybe zero votes.
Zero vote, yeah.
Right. So it's not really going to sway the election. In York Center, I think it was York Center. Might have been, yeah, York Center. 2 years ago, there was a by-election, and Maxime Bernier, before he stood in the Manitoba by-election, he stood in the York Center election for the PPC, and the Conservative candidate lost. I believe, and I may be mistaken, but I'm pretty sure that it's close, that Maxime Bernier received the exact margin of difference between the Conservative and the Liberal candidate, right? He got the margin of difference. He was the deciding factor as to why the Conservatives lost. Everybody who's a Conservative goes, oh, that's terrible. Why would Maxime do this? I can tell you why. He anchored the Conservatives to being conservative, right? Yes. He's forcing them to say, don't forget about us and don't abandon your base, because we can do this to you. We can be the exact reason why you lose by-elections. That to me is great for democracy. Great.
Yeah, you bet. Harrison, so conservative, no, not conservative, sorry. Like PPC, now they believe like they are pushing for these mass immigration, they are putting a cap on it. So you believe like all the credits goes to PPC, Maxime Bernier and his party. And also, like, remember, as we were discussing earlier regarding vaccine mandates, right?
Mm.
So it was the Maxime Bernier was the first person who spoke against it. So later, so conservative never spoke about in against of vaccine mandates, and there was a freedom convoy. So first they said, "Oh no, we don't need to touch it." Then Pyri Puliar came in and he was talking with someone. So then this party went on like talking about the freedom convoy, but Maxine Bernier was before favoring this protest and also against a vaccine mandate. So when Pyri Puliar became the leader of Conservative Party, he won the nomination or leadership race. So
Yes.
then Trudeau went on and he dismissed all those mandates. So he took the credit for that one. Like it means Trudeau did it just because of Pierre Poilievre, leader of the Conservative Party. But the actual credit shouldn't go to Maxime Bernier, who has been against of these mandates since day one.
Well, I would say that Maxime Bernier deserves some credit, not all of the credit.
Mhm.
I think when it comes to vaccine mandates, the credit goes to the truckers. The
Yes.
trucker convoy was the reason why Aaron O'Toole got ousted from the conservative leadership.
Mhm.
Trucker convoy, frankly, are the reason why Pierre Poilievre became the leader of the opposition.
Yeah.
Poilievre was quiet, dead silent
Yes.
during the entire pandemic. But once the truckers got there, once they cleared the way, Poilievre showed up as the savior. He
Mhm.
came in there with the sword and was like, "I am your guy. I'm going to be the guy." Of course, political opportunism, call it what you want. That's what I see it as. Maxime Bernier was the only guy to do it when it mattered during the
Yes.
election.
Yes.
He was the only candidate to speak about it. Aaron O'Toole put a gag order on his entire conservative caucus to not speak at all about this.
Mhm.
Remember, Aaron O'Toole called for a federal vaccine passport. That's more than what Justin Trudeau called for. Now, what happened after the Freedom Convoy? Almost all the provinces began to drop their mandates. The truckers deserve the credit.
Yes.
Maxime Bernier deserves some credit.
Yeah.
With immigration, I think I think the credit goes to Maxime Bernier again deserves some credit because he's the only guy that's been talking about it. The credit should really go to the people, though. And what
Mhm.
I mean by that is the fact that
Indeed.
we've finally broken out of our shell. We've finally decided that enough is enough. The
Mhm.
majority are going to speak, and we're going to do so without fear. We don't care if you call us racist. We don't care if you call us xenophobic.
Mhm.
Enough is enough. And the overwhelming majority of opposition from the people is what has triggered the federal government to act on this. But like I
Mhm.
said before, Sammy, they're not really acting. They're
Yeah.
just trying to please the crowd and say one thing with this hand, and then the hand behind their back is really pulling the strings and bringing more people in. That's the truth.
You bet. Yeah, absolutely. You are right about this one. So so right now you may read the report of National Security and Intelligence Committee of Parliamentarians report
Yes. Yes.
regarding foreign interference. There are two key names. China and India are involved in this foreign interference, and many MPs are colluding with these foreign actors. And
Mhm.
so day one, conservative was silent. Bulak Bulak leader Blanchet stood up, and his first question was regarding this report. And then Jagmeet Singh also took a shot of this one. So on the next day, conservative up start asking these questions, and since then it keeps going on. But liberal are keep declining it, and they are asking for the top security clearance for the Fiery Puliar and his MPs to get a clearance, and this they need to see that report. That mean if you take, please correct me if I'm wrong. So if you take the top security clearance, if you read that report, then you cannot question, and you may not um, say publicly about those names. And so liberal are completely refusing to disclosing those names. Do you think they will disclose those MPs' name, and will they be charged, and will there any action be taken against them, or they may resign, or they will just boot it out from their caucus?
Well, this is a major issue. Allegedly, we have traitors
Mhm.
in parliament giving information to hostile nations. India has proven to not be a friend of Canada,
Yes,
and nor has China. We know China is certainly an enemy of Canada. Let's just call it what they are. China is the enemy,
yes.
right? They have been flooding our country with drugs and killing our people
Mhm.
with fentanyl and drugs, and they've been interfering in our democracy. Um, there is a carve out in the rules that you are allowed to release release information to the public if it is in the national interest.
Yes.
I couldn't think of anything more in the national interest than to know who in our parliament is a traitor to our country. These names have to be released. Someone on that NSI COP committee who has the information should do their duty. I've said this, and many other people have said this. These names have to come out. If the government is shielding traitors from being exposed, what does that tell you about the government? If people on that committee, and there are conservatives on that committee, there are NDP politicians on that committee, if those people are shielding the public or shielding traitors in our parliament, well, what does that tell you about them? I don't know exactly what the rules are. The reason why Polyev didn't want to read the report on China was because, as you said, if he read that report, he would have to be quiet about it and he couldn't say to the public, he couldn't criticize it. There might be something to that. I'm inclined to not believe he's lying there. But this is a major, major problem. The names have to be released. We need to know who these people are. They need to be given due process, right? We need to know who they are,
Yes.
and then they need to be investigated.
Yes.
But at the moment, the longer this goes on, they're still there. They're
Yes.
still operating in Parliament. And if you got nothing to lose, let's say you're one of these MPs who's working for China.
Yeah.
You know that eventually your name's probably going to come out. You know that you're probably going to be found out. So you've got little to lose at this point. Why don't you just keep going and keep working with them? The longer this goes on, the worse it gets for Canadians, the worse it gets for our democracy, the worse it gets for our national security. Something has to happen. I don't know. I don't know what that looks like, but it's got to stop. And we got to figure out who these people are.
So, do you think these names will come out?
I think eventually they will, right? I mean, it was an RCMP or was a CSIS leaker who was
Yes.
giving information to the Globe and Mail,
Yeah.
Bob Fife.
Mm-hmm.
And that was in the national interest. As
Yes.
far as I can tell, nobody has found who that CSIS leaker is. That CSIS leaker has not been hauled before a court. He's not been put in jail, he or she. Someone is going to leak this information. It's going to come out. There's no way it can stop at this point. The media, the parliamentary press, the legacy media press, they have to keep hounding these guys until the names come out. All media have to keep hounding this government until the names come out. They've got to be exposed. We've got to know who these people are. Let's just think about this. If this story were in any other major democracy,
Let's see.
say
Yeah.
it was in the UK, it would be front page news, cover to cover. It would be the biggest story in the country. If this story was in the United States, it would be the biggest story in the country. Australia, it's happening in our country. And yeah, it's a big story, but it's not really the dominant news driving story coming out of our country right now. And it ought to be.
Mm-hmm. And like as you said, if it happened anywhere, it would be a top story. And if such scandals after scandals, and violating ethics laws after, like, Trudeau broke ethics laws twice, but still he remained the prime minister. If it would be in UK, France,
Mhm.
Italy, Germany, or US, or anywhere, any other democratic world, so the prime minister would resign immediately, wouldn't he?
Yep. Yep. And it's funny. I heard a podcast with the editor-in-chief of the Atlantic. I don't support the Atlantic. I don't read the Atlantic. It's a leftist, in my opinion, it's a leftist rag. But he was talking about how they treat Trump, which is to never normalize Trump's behavior. I don't mind Trump. I don't really care. But their editorial perspective is that every time Trump says something that is crazy, we can't just base it off of the fact that he always says that. It's not normal, right? We're seeing in Canada is we're seeing a normalization of breaking the rules, right? Because Trudeau has done it so many times, the media is just like, well, he's already done it a few times. It's sort of becoming normal. You can't normalize this stuff. Every time it happens, it needs to be the biggest story in our country. They need to be hounded. I can't believe he got away with SNC-Lavalin. Can't believe he got away with We Charity. Can't believe he got away with the China story. It always happens. It never ends with this guy. And yet it's kind of becoming, we're kind of building up a national callous, right? We're building a sort of we're getting used to it. It can't happen. We can't get used to this stuff. This is crazy. All of it's crazy. Each of these scandals would bring down a government, but it hasn't. This guy's Teflon. He won't go. So it's unbelievable. But the press cannot normalize this. It needs to become, they need to hound it until it happens. We need to know how long they've known about this. We need to know if the candidates and the the MPs that have already been named as potentially being involved in this. Let's remember what they said about Han Dong, the Liberal MP in Don Valley North, right? If it's that guy, let's hear it. If it's other people, let's hear it. If it's Conservatives, let's get it out there. If it's Liberals, if it's cabinet ministers, let's get it out there because we need to know.
Yeah, and do you think this report would sink Liberal government?
Unfortunately, no, because they don't go. They don't go whenever these major reports come out. It should, if it's 12 and if the majority of them are Liberals, it should. It would sink a British government. It would sink a German, it would sink an Italian government, but it won't sink our government. It won't.
As Trudeau said, he admires China's basic dictatorship. Remember?
Of course. He has said that. He said many things like that. They won't call what's going on with the Uyghurs in China a genocide.
Yeah.
They hide this. They try to basically, it's like kowtowing to the enemy.
Yes.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah, they abstain, like cabinet minister abstain from that vote, like calling out China for genocide against minor Muslims,
Yeah.
But Trudeau says, oh, there is Islamophobia is going on in Canada and elsewhere else, but he just take caution for calling out China,
It's crazy. It's crazy. He's afraid of them. He's afraid of China because look at all the reports we've seen about China. They're deeply embedded and involved with the Liberal Party of Canada. They're involved in the fundraising. Trudeau goes to the fundraisers with people who are national security targets. We've seen the pictures. We've seen them at events like this. It goes deep into this government. We know it, and it's kind of fallen off, right? This new NSI COP report has brought it back into the news cycle, but we kind of forgot about all of it. We kind of forgot about the story before that, right? And we just can't. We can't be forgetting about this stuff. It's critically important.
And so what do you expect? What will happen next?
I think that we're going to get the names. I think that the Globe and Mail is going to get another major, big story, a big exclusive story. We're going to get the names, and those MPs will be forced to explain themselves and forced to explain how they ended up on this list. I think that there's going to be probably another inquiry into this. And I don't know what else is going to happen, but I think that at least we can predict it will become a major election it'll become an election factor. The Conservatives will say that the Liberals have people working who are actively working against the interests of Canada. And I think it will be, one of the major stories that drives the election next year.
So do you think, will there be a no confidence vote on this based on this report?
Well, one can only hope, right? I mean, the NDP are the ones that are holding all the cards in that instance. The Liberals won't no confidence Justin Trudeau. There are reports that Trudeau is actually planning to resign this summer. There are reports saying that people are predicting this. That could very well happen. And if that happens, then the Liberals will get a little boost.
Mhm.
They will continue their working agreement with the NDP. Things will go on. There won't be he won't fall to a no confidence if he resigns, of course. And I don't think Trudeau is the guy that would want to carry an L like that. I don't think he'd want to carry that defeat with him. If he knows he's going to be ousted as a no in a no confidence vote, he'll just resign. If he knows he's going to lose the election, I wouldn't be surprised if he puts someone else in charge to be the person who takes the major fall. Look at what happened with Brian Mulroney and Kim Campbell. That's what happened. He left Kim Campbell holding the bag to be the
Mhm.
one who takes the major loss. I think that might happen.
Yeah. And so let me ask you a frankly question. Do you think Jagmeet Singh is standing on just sake of for his pension? What is being
Yes.
paid?
Yes, without a doubt. Without a doubt. I really believe that at this point. There's very little that can convince me otherwise. I'll put it that way. Even the legacy media are saying that now, right? It was a conspiracy theory before. We,
Yes.
we were saying this a year ago. Now they can see it. Of course, he wants his pension. He wants the money. Of
And yeah,
course.
so politics is not nothing else than making money, isn't it?
Politics is about winning, is about obtaining power, right? It's about obtaining power, in some cases by any means necessary.
Yeah, you bet.
The
And
money is just the money is just a benefit, right?
mhm,
And then think about what happens when you leave politics. Board seats, major advisory positions. You can make a lot of money out after politics, but when you got your pension, that's a little side cash. That's your spending money right there.
yeah, while Canadians can't make a one-time meal and they are just living a luxury lifestyle.
Absolutely right.
When Canadian takes their dimes. Yeah, okay, thank you so much. Is there anything else you would add up?
I think that pretty much covers it. I think we had a good conversation here and covered a lot of ground.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah,
All right. Of
yeah, thank you so much, Harrison, for taking time. And you need to
course.
enjoy your vacation in Boston and with your fiance and our family
Thank you
members.
so
And
much.
it's my pleasure and wishing you both very best for your marriage.
Thank you so
Yeah,
much. I
congratulations
appreciate
and
that.
happy marriage, sir. Thank you.
Okay, thank
Yeah,
you.
you
Have a
take
great
care,
have a
please.
great weekend.
Yeah, thank you. You too. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.